Good evening. Tonight we will be discussing the Industrial Revolution and its effects on the world. The Industrial Revolution ushered in an age of technological advancement and brought with it a new way of life. It unfolded over more than a century of ingenuity and social change. The developments made during this period set up the base for our modern-day society, and without it, our lives today would be totally different. Although the positive advancements made during this time period were greatly appreciated, a long list of social issues arose that impeded much of the population from prosperity. Let's take a look at how it all began.
The Industrial Revolution is a profound transformation in human society that led to longer, healthier, and more productive lives. It initially started in England during the 18th century and spread across the world. There are several main causes of the Industrial Revolution: the population growth propelling economic growth, an agricultural revolution, the expansion of trade, and an openness to innovation. Many people migrated from Ireland to England, from the countryside to the cities. Even more people migrated from Europe to America. In fact, America's population rose more than 25 million from 1791 to 1860.
And now let's go take a look at how the Finchley family is doing during the Hungry 40s, a period when Ireland faced a potato blight and most of Europe was in an economic depression.
Oh, you're home.
I'm afraid I have some terrible news. I've been thinking about moving. The economic depression is just so bad and we're in so much debt, I think we might have to.
But where would we go?
Britain, I overheard the lads talking about it in the pub. They have some new machines that help make clothes so much faster and easier.
So what do you want to do then? Pack up and leave?
Well, we don't have much to pack. All the potatoes are diseased. We have nothing to live for. The potatoes are gone. We want our dear Shannon to have a nice life. We can just get up and leave.
Alright then, let's go.
In addition, more widespread resistance to disease and more reliable food supplies resulted in the growth of population, and the dependable food supplies and better job opportunities led to people marrying at young ages and having more children. The agricultural revolution began before the 18th century. New crops, mostly from the Americas, produced more food per acre and in effect allowed farmers to raise more cattle for meat and milk. Only wealthy landowners could afford to invest in new crops, and they closed off their land to experiment with different farming methods. The widespread enclosing of land used by the public is called the enclosure movement. This resulted in the landowners' tenants becoming sharecroppers and landless laborers having little choice but to migrate to other lands like America, Canada, or Australia. The growth of population and food supply was accompanied by the growth of trade and a fascination of technology. Europeans had a higher demand for sugar, tea, coffee, and cocoa. They also sought to improve their nautical technology, artillery, and invented the hot air balloon and the first semaphore telegraph. In America, Benjamin Franklin experimented with electricity, and Eli Whitney and John Hall invented important machine tools.
Now let's look at the many reasons why the Industrial Revolution started in England.
There are many reasons to why the Industrial Revolution began in England. First of all, England had a stable government. They maintained control over the people when many other regions, like France, were suffering from revolutions. They were not in debt and they had a strong economy. This allowed people to invest in the building of businesses, factories, and schools. The English economy was not in debt and had a strong economy because booming harvests, growth of population, and successful trade. This leads us to the second reason. Second, England was isolated from the rest of Europe by water. It was not easy to be invaded, and they had no trade barriers. They were not landlocked like other European countries. Because of this, England put water into good use. This will be talked about in the next reason. The third reason why the Industrial Revolution began in England is because England had good water and transportation systems. Because England had many rivers, canals, and indented coastlines, people and cargo can easily travel by water. Fourth, England was very commercial. England had flourishing trade with other countries.
England mainly traded with the Americas, West Africa, the Middle East, and India. They imported tea, sugar, and better clothes while exporting woolen and cotton textiles.
The fifth reason is that England had many available raw resources such as coal and iron.
This enabled Europe to use coal and iron to establish successful industries where these resources are deposited.
Sixth, the scientific revolution helped pave way for the developments in technology. People were already curious and turned into innovative inventions to solve common problems.
The philosophy of positivism was introduced. It supports the idea that the scientific method can be used to solve every social and technical problem.
The seventh reason is the agricultural revolution. This produced more food per acre and developed crop rotation. The enclosure movement and the putting out system was developed in the agricultural revolution, and the putting out system was eventually replaced by the factory system. The eighth reason is that technological improvements were made. Many developments were made in the coal, iron, and textile industry, and useful farming inventions were also developed.
Coal was developed to coke and people began producing iron instead of steel. Innovations in the textile industry took place. John Kay invented the flying shuttle, a device that allowed weavers to weave faster. The spinning jenny was later invented, enabling workers to work with 8 spools of yarn at once. The water frame, a water-powered spinning frame, allowed workers to spin even more spools of yarn. It was invented by Richard Arkwright. The cotton gin was invented by Eli Whitney. It was a machine that quickly and easily separated cotton fibers and increased the productivity of factories.
Ninth, England had a large population growth. This was mainly due to the agricultural revolution, and this provided for a good labor supply for factories. This labor supply included men, women, and children. The last reason why the Industrial Revolution started in England is because England had a fluid social structure.
At the time, the royal court and the aristocracy were less powerful, and their political power was not as centralized compared to other countries in Europe. Intermarriages between classes were allowed and happened often. This gave many people the opportunity to learn and the determination to do well in society.
With the Industrial Revolution came many changes in Britain. Urbanization took place, which, along with an increase in population, led to overcrowded cities. This, in turn, led to horrible living conditions. Neighborhoods were filthy, and diseases such as cholera, tuberculosis, typhoid, and typhus spread quickly. Working conditions also became very bad for men, women, and children, and child labor became very common throughout all of Europe because it was cheaper for factory owners and they were needed to fit into small places in the factories. The economy went through a recurrent cycle of depression and relief, and there was an emergence of a new middle class. Transportation was also highly improved during this time through innovations and inventions. The early Industrial Revolution made many impacts on Britain, and that was only the beginning.